All right, should we get going? Good afternoon. I want to start off with Myanmar. And just to tell you that the Secretary General's Special Envoy for Myanmar, Schraner Burgener, will travel to the region this week. She will start off in Bangkok, where she will meet with Thai authorities, United Nations regional officials, and ambassadors accredited to Myanmar who are in Bangkok. In addition to Thailand, the Special Envoy is consulting on visits to other ASEAN countries as well as other neighboring countries. As she has highlighted repeatedly, a robust international response to the ongoing crisis in Myanmar requires a unified regional effort involving neighboring countries who can leverage influence towards stability in Myanmar. The Special Envoy will continue to support the important role of regional actors in facilitating stability and, ultimately, in finding an orderly and peaceful way out of this situation. With support from the Security Council, Ms. Schraner Burgener will continue her efforts to visit Myanmar. She hopes that the Myanmar military will provide her access to the country and to detained leaders, including President U Win Myint and State Councilor Aung San Suu Kyi. She, of course, stands ready to resume dialogue with the military to contribute to a return to Myanmar's democratic path, peace, and stability. She is ready to visit Myanmar at any time. Also on Myanmar, our colleagues on the ground say that they are alarmed by the humanitarian impact of escalating violence in northeastern and southeastern parts of the country in recent weeks. In southeastern Kayin State and Bago region, thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes due to attacks by the Myanmar armed forces, including with the use of airstrikes, as well as due to clashes between the armed forces and the Karen National Union. In the northeast of Myanmar, clashes have displaced 3,000 people since early March, while in northern Shan, fighting has forced more than 8,000 people from their homes since December of 2020. And here in the Security Council, or virtually in the Security Council, they held a ministerial virtual debate on mine action this morning. The Secretary General, in his remarks, noted progress in the past years that have been made significant expanses of land safer to use, from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Cambodia to Colombia. But he added, challenges have also intensified. Conflict has become more urbanized. Armed groups are proliferating, and the use of improvised explosive devices is increasing. The Secretary General pointed out that 3 areas require attention. He urged member states to ensure that all peace operations have the capacity to operate in an environment facing high explosive threats, and particularly improvised explosive devices. Peacekeepers must have the knowledge and the equipment they need to deliver on their mandate safely, he said. Secondly, Mr. Guterres urged Security Council to strengthen efforts to further integrate mine action into relevant resolutions, reporting, and sanctions regime. Finally, he called on those member states that have not yet acceded to the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention to do so without delay. Those remarks were shared with you. Turning to Mozambique, we, along with our partners, are closely following with deep concern new reports of violations against civilians, including alleged beheadings and unverified reports of the use of child soldiers during the attack by non-state armed groups and clashes in Cabo Delgado's Palma district that have been going on since March 24th. It is extremely difficult to verify information on these incidents at this time for us. But we are concerned about the situation of civilians who fled the violence and those who remain in Palma. Nearly 12,800 people, 43% of those 12,800 people are children, have arrived in the districts of Nagande, Mueda, Montepuez, and Pemba. Many more people are expected to still be on the move in search of safety and assistance. Humanitarian partners in Mozambique are assisting displaced people at the arrival points and scaling up the ongoing humanitarian response in Cabo Delgado. So far in 2021, more than 500,000 people in the province have received humanitarian assistance. The United Nations calls on all parties to the conflict in Cabo Delgado to protect civilians. The humanitarian community in Mozambique has already stretched prior to the Palma attacks, having responded to multiple climate emergencies on top of conflict in Cabo Delgado in the first months of 2021. Yet humanitarian appeal for Cabo Delgado crisis is currently just 1% funded. more resources are immediately required to meet the needs of the people fleeing the violence in Palma. And turning to Côte d'Ivoire, I can tell you that the Secretary General noted the announcement made by President Ouattara yesterday, in which he indicated that former President Laurent Gbagbo and Charles Blé Goudé are now, quote, free to return to Côte d'Ivoire when they want. The Secretary General calls on all Ivorian stakeholders to build on the positive outcomes of the government-initiated dialogue to foster peace and national reconciliation in Côte d'Ivoire. And from South Sudan, and just to highlight the real impact of when the money no longer flows into our humanitarian appeals, the World Food Programme said today that due to significant funding gaps, it is cutting food rations for refugees and internally displaced people in the country. The cutbacks will impact 700,000 refugees and internally displaced people, who will now receive 50% of a full ration, down from 70%, which had been previous case. WFP's country director in South Sudan, Matthew Hollingsworth, said it is a very painful decision to take from the hungry to give to the starving, but this is a reality. The agency's resources in the country are stretched thin at a time when levels of food insecurity are at their highest in a decade, and donors are grappling with the economic impact of COVID-19. WFP immediately needs $125 million for its food assistance operations for the next 6 months to provide food in sufficient quantities. More from the World Food Programme. And the UN peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic is telling us that the national election authorities announced that the next round of legislative elections, initially scheduled for May 2nd, has been postponed until May 23rd. This, they said, will give the authorities more time for ongoing technical and operational preparations. The mission also indicated that based on the provisional results published on March 21st, the forthcoming legislative elections are likely to involve roughly 50 constituencies in Bangui and in 12 of the 16 prefectures of the Central African Republic. Moving on to Yemen, over 5,000 COVID-19 cases have now been confirmed since the start of the pandemic. This number has doubled in just 1 month, signaling an alarming, dangerous surge in the virus. Fatalities are on the rise, with almost 1,000 deaths having been recorded so far. A third of those have been confirmed since mid-March. We know that these figures greatly underestimate the country's actual disease burden due to limited testing capacities and underreporting, as well as challenges of access to any treatment. Health partners are working hard to scale up the support, including through enhanced surveillance, expanded testing, and the provision of essential medicine and supplies. Efforts are underway to vaccinate priority groups, following the arrival of the first batch of doses that I reported on last week. As of today, Yemen's humanitarian response plan, which is seeking $3.85 billion, is only 13% funded. And in India, our teams there have been supporting authorities to safely reopen schools and in some areas to continue remote education, with a focus on reaching children in marginalized and disadvantaged communities. UNICEF has worked on e-learning and other programs in 17 states, reaching nearly 60 million children, half of them girls. UNICEF helped to train 400,000 people working in early childhood education. For its part, the UN Population Fund has reached more than 22,000 teachers, 500,000 students on preventing the spread of COVID-19 in schools. UNHCR has helped more than 3,400 refugee children access education and provided nearly 3,000 education kits. A few more notes, if you'll bear with me. The FAO and the International Maritime Organization today announced that they have partnered with 30 countries to tackle marine litter and clean up the world's oceans. The Glow Litter Partnership Project will assist developing countries in identifying opportunities to prevent and reduce marine litter, including plastics from the maritime transport and fisheries sectors. The project aims to decrease the use of plastics in these industries and identify opportunities to recycle plastics to better protect our fragile marine environment, as well as the lives and livelihoods in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goal 14. 5 regions will be represented: Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America, and the Pacific. Today, the FAO said that the global commodity food prices rose again in March, marking the 10th consecutive monthly increase. FAO noted that quotations for vegetable oils and dairy product have led the rise. The price index was 2.1% higher in March than in February. It reached its highest level since July 2014. And Toby, since you're here, I have an answer for you on our reaction to the press statement released by the IMF on debt service and other issues. The Secretary General is encouraged by calls for the extension of the debt service suspension initiative, which has already provided $5 billion in savings, which is helping vulnerable countries contribute to the pandemic response. To truly enable a global recovery, the DSSI and the common framework for debt treatment must also be expanded to include vulnerable middle-income countries which face increasing debt risks. In the same vein, he also wholeheartedly welcomes the call for a general allocation of $650 billion in special drawing rights, which will provide the liquidity needed, including to purchase and invest in vaccines, diagnostic, and therapeutics. We call on the IMF to explore how to further support vulnerable low-income and middle-income countries in line with its mandate, and also for them to work with their members to continue exploring ways for voluntary post-allocation channeling of special drawing rights to support members' recovery efforts. Since the beginning of the crisis, and most recently during the summits he co-hosted with the Prime Ministers of Jamaica and Canada, the Secretary General has been calling for a three-phased approach to debt crisis: a debt standstill, targeted debt relief for the most vulnerable, and a reform in the international debt architecture. The Secretary General sent a message today to the International Romani Union as it marked its 50th anniversary of its first Congress. He said that the troubled human rights situation in Roma worldwide has long been a matter of serious concern for us. The United Nations, he said, is strongly committed to working together with the Roma civil society and other partners in strengthening the protection of human rights and freedoms. He said that we all stand with the Secretary General said that we stand with all Roma who stand up to combat multiple forms of discrimination, including stereotyping and hate speech. We will continue to speak out on this anti-Gypsyism and support efforts to secure genuine inclusion of Roma in societies across the globe. Tomorrow, 1:30, there'll be a press encounter, today at 1:30 p.m., there will be a press encounter by the co-chairs of the Group of Friends on Climate and Security. That is Ambassador Christoph Hüchsen of Germany, Ambassador Margot Dier, the permanent representative of Nauru, along with Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield of the United States. They will brief you from the Security Council stakeout area, live and in person. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., there will be a virtual briefing by the president of ECOSOC, Ambassador Munir Akram, who will hold an end-of-term press briefing entitled Face to Face to discuss how ECOSOC can respond to the challenges of the pandemic. We'll be sending those details along. Lastly, we are up to 87 fully paid-up member states, so we say Efkaristopoli, Ulken Ramet, and Spasiba. If any of you can guess the actual three countries I'm talking about, you will get a week's worth of first questions. Philippe, do you want to give it a try?
I have two, Greece and
I know,
Russia.
Everybody has two. The third is Kazakhstan. So we say thank you to our friends in Greece, in Kazakhstan, and the Russian Federation.
So,
all right, well, we'll go to Philippe because at least he dared to try.
thank you very much. My question is on Denmark. Denmark apparently decided to send back a Syrian refugee, saying that Damas is now secure and they have to leave. It's not a forceful departure, but in the same time, if the refugee don't want to go back to Syria, they can't anymore have a job or study in a university or school. What is your position on this?
Listen, I haven't seen that particular report. Our stand and principal stand is that refugees should never be forced to go back. Any return should be their choice, and it should be done in dignity and, of course, in safety. But let me look at that particular case. Edie and then James.
Thank you, Steph. First, to follow up on Christine Schraner Burgener's visit. When you say that she's interested in going to see neighbors, is one right to assume that that includes China?
Yeah, I think that would be an assumption that would be safe.
Okay. Secondly, the Polisario Front says that its police chief has been killed, and local media say he was killed in a Moroccan drone attack. Does the UN have any comment?
Our colleagues at the mission are very much aware of these reports of alleged incident in or near the territory of Western Sahara. At this point, the mission is unable to confirm these reports. If that changes, I will let you know. Mr. Bays, and then Toby.
Two questions. First, to follow up on Myanmar. You said that the Special Envoy is hoping to resume dialogue with the military. When she spoke in here, she said she had had dialogue with the deputy commander. When did dialogue break off? When did she last speak to them? Was there any reason they gave to stopping the dialogue?
No, I think she is, to answer your question factually, I think it was probably more than a few weeks ago that she had her last phone conversation with them, but she has been in contact in writing. I think what she is hoping to have is obviously at some point a face-to-face and a more active dialogue with them.
And my other question on a different subject, we are seeing scenes of violence in Northern Ireland. What is the Secretary-General's reaction?
I think we would call for all involved to do whatever they can to appease the situation. Toby.
Thanks, Steph. Two questions for you today. First one on UNRWA. The U.S. has resumed funding, and it was received positively by administrators there. But the West Bank administrators said that settler violence has never been higher in the West Bank, and that we're up 30% on demolitions and displacements year over year. Why is this, and what does the Secretary General make of it?
I mean, I'm not here to answer the why. I think you should ask those who are responsible for that. We will, as usual, report back monthly to the Security Council through our special coordinator. We have always and will continue to express our concern and our opposition to violence as well as to the demolitions.
And the second question is that Kim Jong-un, the head of the DPRK, said that yesterday it was reported, he said it's the country's facing one of the worst situations ever, maybe the worst. What's the status of where DPRK is with receiving vaccines from the international community, and how concerned is the Secretary General over the humanitarian situation in North Korea? On the
vaccines, I'd have to check, and I think in terms of what the access is, we continue to be concerned about the humanitarian situation in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. We have a humanitarian presence on the ground, and we are doing our best working with the government to address the situation. All right, Evelyn, I think you registered a question early, and then we'll go back to.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much, Stéphane. On mine, there was nothing said about the Ottawa Convention, and while Biden has made strong statements against mine deployment, the Pentagon has announced it as smart bombs that disintegrate and aren't as bad as the regular bombs. Is there any reaction to that contradiction from the Secretary General? And I have another question after that.
Well, I mean, I think I've addressed this issue the last couple of days. The Secretary General was very clear in his call for all countries that have yet to do so to join the mine ban convention. And I think his message against mines, against explosive devices, his message for disarmament has always been very clear. Okay,
And
you go ahead.
secondly, one more.
Go ahead.
Who has announced, WHO has announced that 100 countries received vaccines, I think it was 100, and they were all the vaccines we know about. Is anyone tracing the ones that China is distributing that have not proven effective yet? Is anyone following this in the UN, or is it just WHO?
Well, I mean, there are two things here. Member states, those who do not have access to direct vaccine productions, have been accessing vaccines either through COVAX, or they've tried to, and I think that's what WHO was referring to, and a lot of member states have in parallel done bilateral deals with various countries that are producing vaccines. So we have no official visibility on those deals. On COVAX and who's gotten it, I think the COVAX and the UNICEF website is very clear with the latest information. Okay, James Reinl.
Thanks, Steph. Two questions on Myanmar. First one is on Ms. Schraner Burgener's visit to Thailand. That could plausibly involve a visit to the Karen community who live in Thailand, but they're refugees from Myanmar, and they have been affected by this recent bout of fighting. Is anything like that in the works, a visit to those refugee camps?
It's a good question. I will check. Her time in Bangkok, first of all, I think she has to do some sort of quarantine. The COVID situation is obviously making all travel within countries and between countries that much more challenging. Whether or not she meets or speaks to Karen refugees, I will find out. But I think, from what you've heard from her remarks here and other places, she has put a premium on contact with people and hearing the voices of people directly. And I can assure she will continue to do that. Who's next on my...
Sorry, Stéphane, there was a second...
Go ahead.
A second question.
Go ahead.
It's a quick one, though. Tomorrow, I believe there's an ARIA Security Council briefing on Myanmar. Is there anybody from the Secretariat briefing?
A valid question which deserves an answer, which I will get to you. Every question you ask is valid, James, I will add. Mario.
Hi, so just a follow-up on the Western Sahara question. Over the past few months, the Polisario has repeatedly said that there's a war ongoing and that there have been casualties among the Moroccan troops. Has MINURSO been able to verify any of these, and what's your take on the situation here?
The mission continues to receive reports in various places of sporadic, sometimes of unconfirmed reports of sporadic fighting. They continue to do their work, monitor the situation throughout the territory, and will report back regularly to the Security Council as mandated. Abdelhamid, and then Iftikhar.
Thank you, Stéphane. Today, Israel issued a statement, an official statement, saying they will not cooperate with the ICC in its ongoing investigation of war crimes, crimes against humanity committed in the war on Gaza in 2014. Do you have any comment on that?
No, I mean, as you know, the ICC is independent from us. I have no specific comment on that. We, for our part, will continue to regularly report back what we observe in the occupied Palestinian territories. Iftikhar.
Thank you, Steph. You said that the Special Envoy on Myanmar will go to Myanmar. Does this mean she has assurances from the military authorities?
No, we're not.
To visit the country?
No, as I said, she hopes to very much go to Myanmar, and I think she doesn't have the green light to go as of yet. I think part I think her efforts, the success of her efforts the possibility of the success of her efforts would increase with strong support from the Security Council. And I think the Security Council has expressed itself collectively in that way. So we hope that will help. But we have nothing to confirm at this point. James. Oh, sorry. Then let's go continue the first round of questions.
Thank you, Stéphane. Abdullah Imasi from Al Hura TV. Some sources told Reuters today that foreign lenders and the banks cutting ties with Lebanon's central bank. How do you evaluate the situation there in Lebanon?
Well, I haven't seen those particular reports. I mean, we continue to be concerned the fact that there is no government found. We will continue with our international partners to work in support the people of Lebanon and to encourage political leaders to form a government that meets the aspirations of the Lebanese people. Mr. Bays.
Yeah, just returning to Abdul Hamid's question about Israel's statement on the ICC. The Israeli statement says that the ICC does not have any authority in this case. I know the ICC is separate from the UN, but the UN is supportive of the ICC, and the ICC examined this issue at great length and decided it did have jurisdiction. Does the Secretary-General back the ICC in the work it's doing anywhere it wants to work in the world, and for it to decide its jurisdiction? Does he agree with that?
Yes, the Secretary of the UN and the ICC are separate. The Secretary-General, as a matter of principle, has expressed his support for the ICC and the important work that it does. As to the debate of where its jurisdiction is or is not, that is something that member states have to decide, and he will not weigh in on that.
But member states of the ICC, the states parties have given that authority to the ICC, and they've made a decision. They have jurisdiction.
I understand, but that is an issue for member states to decide. Yes, Toby.
Does the Secretary General support a global minimum corporate tax rate?
Look, this is an issue I think that will be discussed by the G20. I think what we'd like to see is an equitable system that ensures that corporations pay their fair share. I think especially at a time where there is a need for governments for major investments as part of a pandemic recovery. But I'm not going to get into the weeds of the tax rates, how it should be done. That is something that the G20, I understand, and others will take up. Okay, Amy, all yours.